It's my distinct privilege and pleasure to introduce the new CEO and president of the Prostate Cancer Foundation, Dr. Charles Ryan. Chuck, welcome as our new leader to a great biomedical research foundation. We are so pleased to have you on board. Chuck is from Appleton, Wisconsin, and spent much of his formative education years in the state of Wisconsin, first undergraduate at Marquette University in Milwaukee, and then a MD degree from the University of Wisconsin Medical School, where he also completed his residency. I first met Chuck walking down the street in New York City when he was a clinical fellow in medical oncology at Sloan Kettering Cancer Center in New York City. Chuck and I have been fast friends and colleagues ever since. He is a doctor's doctor. Probably the greatest ability that Chuck has is naming clinical trials. And many patient-centric clinical trials quietly carry the moniker that Chuck invented. He's been involved in a lot of survivorship research, some of which was funded by the Prostate Cancer Foundation. And he has a very patient-centric, holistic attitude towards medicine, which patients love. He values exercise, he values nutrition, but moreover, he values rigorous evidence-based medicine and clinical trials at the highest ethical and scientific standards. So Chuck, we look forward to you continuing your journey, and we're so pleased to be a part of what you will be doing next, hopefully for many years to come.
Hi, I'm Chuck Ryan, incoming President and CEO of the Prostate Cancer Foundation. The PCF has played a huge role in my career development, and I am thrilled by the opportunity to play a role in the next step of this organization's development. I was minding my own business in Minneapolis a few months ago when I got a text stating simply that Mike Milken wants to get to know me better. Not knowing any better, I assumed, and was pleased actually, to think that maybe I was going to be part of some focus group or they wanted to hear about some scientific progress. Instead, what evolved was a series of conversations, a visit to the Phillies stadium to watch them play the Yankees, and a series of meals in the dining room at 1250 4th Street in Santa Monica. And eventually, a call from Mike to build PCF version 3.0, and with it, to change the world. Or at least this one very important corner of it. I'm now extending that invitation to you to join me and the rest of us at the PCF to reimagine the progress we can make for men with this disease and those who love them, and to show with clarity of purpose and scientific rigor what a group of focused, disciplined, and passionate individuals can do when they join together to eliminate death and suffering from the second leading cause of cancer death in men. So where are we going and how do we get there? What the heck is PCF 3.0 anyway, and how can it change the world? I'll get to that. First, allow me to introduce myself. I'm 51, married to Jessica, and the father of 3 kids, Kate, Elise, and Patrick. I currently live in Minneapolis, where until recently I was the B.J. Kennedy Chair in Clinical Oncology and the Director of Hematology and Oncology at the University of Minnesota and Associate Director of the Masonic Cancer Center and NCI-designated Comprehensive Cancer Center. Before that, I was a professor of medicine and urology at the University of California, San Francisco. Before that, I was a trainee at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. And before that, I was at the University of Wisconsin. And in all of these institutions, I worked on PCF-funded projects. But before all of that, I was a kid growing up in Wisconsin, the son of an oncologist dad and a mom who worked at our local hospice. Medical oncology really didn't become a field until around the early 1970s. There was no fellowship and no board certifications until that time. The field evolved when combination chemotherapies were developed for solid tumors, and actually internists began to administer them. My dad was one of those internists. He never trained in oncology, but he learned it on the fly as the field developed around him. He worked dutifully on many cancer types and I was proud of his solid reputation in our community. The problem is, not much of what he did worked all that well, and thus many of his patients eventually became patients of my mother's hospice team. And as the youngest of 4 children, after all of my siblings had left the home to go to college, I spent 4 years with them at the dinner table, and because it was the pre-HIPAA era, I was the passive recipient of many a discussion of the breadth of misery that cancer could wreak on families and, yes, those who provided the care to them. That's how it was in the 1980s. Relatively little to offer, good people doing their best, and a poorly resourced clinical trials infrastructure, few active chemotherapies, and really nothing in terms of targeted treatments, immunotherapies, or really even the integration of a knowledge of tumor biology into treatment considerations. That all began to change for prostate cancer patients in the 1990s, when CapCure, now PCF, was formed by literally bringing together in the same room a small number of very bright minds who worked in the area and were working on prostate cancer. The urologists, oncologists, and researchers who gathered in that room in the early 1990s are thankfully still around, and many are still engaged in the work. Many of them have also gone on to lead or have led departments, cancer centers, and even whole institutions. Their names are likely familiar to you: Nelson, Coffey, Logothetis, Holden, Scher, Wilding, and others. They helped launch the PCF and became mentors to the next generation, my generation, of researchers and clinicians. Oh, and by the way, that room where they gathered, it was Mike Milken's living room. This room, this community, this family has really done some amazing things. We've seen the survival expectations for men with hormone-resistant prostate cancer extend from only about 11 months in the early 1990s to well over 4 years today. And we've developed drugs coming out of many PCF-funded laboratories that offer patients an opportunity for disease control and to achieve what I refer to as the 3 Ps as our goals of care: to preserve, to prevent, and to prolong. Preserve as in preserve function, quality of life, and activity levels. Prevent as in prevent pain, hospitalizations, and health decline. Prolong as in prolong life. And I think most cancer patients would agree they're good goals to achieve while we continue to work on getting more people to the point of cure. The PCF made these advances by believing in people like Charles Sawyers and his hypothesis that the amplified androgen receptor constituted a new therapeutic target, and believing in and funding Pomper, Heston, Bander, Sandhu, Murphy, and others who hypothesized, for example, that PSMA could be a therapeutic and imaging target. And more recently has believed in Mike Hoffman, Michael Morris, Jeremy Calais, Oliver Sarter, Tom Hope, and Scott Tagawa, who helped shape it into a clinical reality as both a therapy and an imaging target. I need to add that the PCF also did this by advocating for and organizing a consortium of sites that could band together to facilitate and prioritize clinical trials. This entity, now known as the Prostate Cancer Clinical Trials Consortium, was initially a PCF project. Those are just a few names, a few projects, and a few members of our community. Of course, I am confident that many others among us are poised to deliver the next great advance. Think of how fortunate we really are to be at this point. If you are a researcher, think back to when you were a little kid. What sets you apart? Curiosity? Discipline? The love of taking things apart and rebuilding them? Imagine your younger self getting a glimpse of who you have become. You are in the big leagues now. You are your little kid self's wildest dream. Don't forget that, and bring that energy to the bench, the clinic, even the Zoom call. If you are a patient, know that what we do for you. But we also work for future versions of you. When you think back on the drama of the moment of your diagnosis and everything that followed, would you change anything? If so, what? What would you change? What advice do you have for your newly diagnosed self? Doing that can help you, help us, help others. If you support this research by working for the PCF, think of the vast influence to which you contribute through fundraising, award administration, education, grant reviews, and event planning. The PCF's work to date is impressive. The PCF now has active allocations for research of over $126 million. In the last 15 years, PCF researchers have cited PCF as a funding source on 4,453 papers that have been cited nearly 252,000 times. To date, in 2021, 345 publications crediting PCF have been cited 336,146 times. That is an impressive body of work. So let's talk about the action plan for the future. As we look to the future, let's ask what more we can do together and how we can harness that collective energy of thousands of doctors and researchers and hundreds of thousands of patients and their loved ones facing the disease. To do so, I want us to start envisioning the PCF as a global public square for prostate cancer. Who comes to this square? Patients seeking guidance, clinicians needing education, researchers needing collaboration and resources to fund their work. In reality, these are all connected. If we do right by our patients, our funding will increase. If our funding increases, we will do even more for our patients. If we communicate better to doctors, researchers, and patients, our work will become better known and more people will seek to join us, working in our labs, on our clinical trial teams, and as funding sponsors. And that will increase our scope. I call that an upward spiral. Why should we call it a public square? First of all are welcome. If you care about the future of cancer research, a man with prostate cancer, or deepening our understanding of all cancers, this place is for you. If you care about a researcher at the beginning of their career and you want to invest in what could lead to 40 years of productive work, this PCF is a place for you. If you care for someone or are someone with the disease, this place is for you. Through our website, our meetings, our print materials, as well as the personal touch we hope to provide. To be clear, the four sides of this square are funding research, patient navigation and support, education, and communication. This may be an expansion of what you have thought the PCF has done, but rest assured that all of the sides of the square depend on and support the others, and all are key to enable us to discover, develop, and disseminate PCF science to the doctors, patients, and communities that need to hear it and to know it. Why is it global? Well, this is simple. It's global because our community is global. We have funded research in 22 countries since our formation, and prostate cancer is a global disease affecting 1.3 million men per year and causing approximately 360,000 deaths per year, with about 30,000 of those deaths occurring here in the United States. We are already taking concrete steps towards realizing the vision and becoming the global public square of prostate cancer. A major and high priority first step is a rapid expansion of our communications network and infrastructure. Today, I'm delighted to announce that PCF is in the process of acquiring eurotoday.com, and we have appointed Ms. Gina Carithers, Communications Officer. In purchasing EuroToday, we now drive content and dialogue on a website that received over 200,000 unique visits in the month of September from 6 continents. EuroToday is an education, information, and dialogue hub for prostate and urologic cancers around the world. Clinicians, patients, industry partners, and others rely on its near real-time access to the breaking science of clinical conferences and publications, and videos curated by clinicians and researchers themselves. I've been fortunate to serve as a contributing editor to a Center for Excellence on eurotoday.com for many years. PCF plus EuroToday will be a dynamite information dissemination tool. Also, I'm happy to announce that through its expanded communications mission, the PCF will not only take a seat at the table for some of the most critical and innovative conversations happening in the field, but will be the group setting that table. You accomplished leaders, scientists, clinical investigators, and thinkers, you can expect to hear more from us on this topic in the near future. And to accelerate this educational mission, we have acquired the following domain names that will expand our digital voice. They are cancerpatientvoices.com, surecap.com, which will support the ongoing work of the SureCap survivorship group within PCF, and womenincancerresearch.com. Our communications team will be building these out in the coming months. As they grow, they will expand our ability to capture clinicians, researchers, and patients alike. I'm delighted to be speaking to you from the virtual retreat, although we all, I think, wish it was happening in person. The PCF Scientific Retreat has always been a source of inspiration and humility, in addition to warm blue fleeces. And so much of that energy comes from the spontaneity at breakfast, question and answer periods, and the back of the room conversations. I've always returned from these scientific retreats feeling energized and feeling like I need to work harder and do better in order to keep up with the rapid pace of change going on in prostate cancer research all over the world and to continue to serve my patients and our research community. Well, we're in our second virtual year, and it's really natural to question if anything has been lost due to the COVID pandemic with regards to how we communicate regarding scientific advances and how we do this retreat. I'm optimistic that we may have some gains that have come from this process, as the virtual retreat is now open to many more people. That living room is now global. Anybody can attend it virtually. The PCF Scientific Retreat is unique for other reasons. Remember that meeting in Mike Milken's living room I described? Impactful as it was, all of the participants were men. 28 years later, this foundation, dedicated to an all-male cancer, stands as an exemplar of mentorship and career advancement of women in science. Over 30% of our grant awardees over the past 4 years have been women. That's 96 women scientists. My objective is that we continue to celebrate, support, and cultivate the rich talent pool that these women in science continue to grow in numbers and in rank, and they go on to become mentors for the next generation. On to the research mission. Let me reiterate that fostering, funding, and following the critical research, discoveries, innovations, and observations remains at the core of what PCF does. A major reason I chose to join PCF was based on who my partners would be, and I am thrilled to be working more closely with Howard Soule. Howard's energy, spirit, and guidance forms the substance at the core mission of PCF. A phone call from Howard Soule is frequently the first indication that one receives to find out that one has received or will be receiving funding from the PCF. I've been on the opposite end of a couple of these calls from Howard Soule, and there's a rush of adrenaline that comes with it. As for scientific priorities, PCF doesn't dictate what the scientific priorities will be, other than to prioritize those projects that will promise most to reduce the suffering and death from this disease, and to fulfill the mission of preserving, prolonging, and preventing, as previously stated. You, the PCF community of scientists, clinicians, and patients, will help us define the priorities. I look forward to identifying, cultivating, and implementing new avenues to fund discovery, such as avenues existing in our line with the PCF scientific mission. Imagine if we can turn, for example, lifestyle factors that we know to be healthy, nutrition and exercise, for example, into avenues for both education of patients and future patients, and funding, where the dissemination of our discovery can actually lead to more discovery and progress. We are working on that, so watch this space. Also, I want PCF to tap into the energy of its rich history of mentorship as a means to fund future research. To realize this goal, I've reached out to a key mentor of mine, Eric Small from UCSF, to help me create the first, quote, Mentors YIA, a granting mechanism funded by former and current YIA members. So if you're a prostate cancer researcher who wrote your first prostate cancer paper on a typewriter, or stored it on a floppy disk, or presented it on actual slides, then you are probably in the generation that can give back to the PCF and accelerate your mentorship skills to a new generation. I look forward to hearing from you and to honoring your contributions to the field in the form of this award. Finally, let's talk about PCF 3.0. The spirit of PCF 3.0 is about investing in talent that can devote their energies to the core problems in prostate cancer that affect these patients, as well as their families, but also the core fundamental drivers of suffering from cancer in general. These can include small projects with big implications. These can be fundamental molecular processes or fundamental processes in care delivery. Let me give you two great examples of what I think when I think of the spirit of PCF 3.0. The first is Dr. Nima Sharifi. Nima is a friend and colleague who works at the Cleveland Clinic, where he runs a lab that started out investigating how androgen hormones like testosterone are produced and broken down. He was in the first class of PCF Young Investigators in 2008. In the process of studying this, he discovered how genetic variation leaves some men at greater risk when taking hormonal therapies. This is a very good advance, and one can see how we can work to develop new therapies and new observations based on it. But Nima didn't stop there. While he focused on aberrations in normal physiology that are co-opted by prostate cancer, he gave us a deeper understanding of normal physiology. His work has elucidated how some drugs can cause hypertension. His work has elucidated how some patients may be resistant to steroid therapies when they have an exacerbation of their asthma. This is a huge problem that kills a lot of people. His work has elucidated how some breast cancers may survive in certain hormonal environments different from other subtypes. That work is very preliminary, but it's going to be tested. And essentially what he has done is what began as a prostate cancer project is now addressing key problems in asthma, breast cancer, and even hypertension. This is the spirit of PCF 3.0. Work that begins in prostate cancer can change the lives of patients with prostate cancer. That's our goal. But it can also benefit society as a whole. It kind of sounds like it might change the world. Another example is Dr. Hella Borno at the University of California, San Francisco. Her story embodies what we at PCF love to tell, and we hope to enable in others. She came to the U.S. on a freedom flight during the Gulf War. She was a star medical student and resident where she identified a desire to address the disparities in cancer care in this country and around the world, and specifically to address some of the disparities in cancer research and clinical trial enrollment. She found her way to prostate cancer to make it her home. Today, she's an entrepreneurial, innovative, compassionate clinician and a PCF-funded rising star. The work she is doing seeks to identify patients who could benefit from clinical trials but may not know that they exist. Of course, this has implications far beyond prostate cancer. This is the spirit of PCF 3.0. It kind of sounds like it might change the world. As we close and we look to the future, let me state again how I feel so deeply privileged to be able to work in this amazing organization with this amazing group of people for wonderful patients in a challenging time of their life. Thank you for your time, and I urge you to consider joining us on this mission to reshape PCF, reshape cancer research, improve the lives of many, and yes, change the world.